get the idea that we're old timers, but our memory only goes back about 30 years, 40 maybe. I don't know. The only thing we know is what our dad told us. The Cookingham family owned these places, and they owned both these farms next door. And in 1919, one of the barns burned down, and the family had to move to the adjoining farm. And the place, that first place, was sold out of the family. And my dad was a school teacher in Westchester in his professional life, and he spent most of his years away from here, and then moved us all back up here and bought that farm back that had been sold out of the family, which was probably the coolest and most memorable thing.
Where our brother William lives was sold out of the family, and out of the family for about 30 years.
At least, right?
Well, from around the 30s.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
1930-ish
Yeah.
to 1960 or 61 when my
Right.
father bought it back.
Right. So that was sort of a miracle that he was able to do that and put that place back together. It has Cookingham initials written in the basement. That was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all we got for you.
No. So our father's parents were Elizabeth Cookingham, and she first married a gentleman who lives in the house I live in, which is the third adjoining farm, and had one child with him, and he passed away young. He was 34. So then she married a Clarke as her second husband. Both husbands lived within a quarter mile of her, so she didn't have to go far to find, a new husband. Our father, William Clarke, as well as his sisters Alice, Florence, and Marion, all became school teachers. There was another brother, George, who did not become a school teacher, and a half-sister who did not become a school teacher. Was it Aunt Alice who worked in Pine Plains, right?
Yeah.
Aunt Alice spent her whole life working in the Pine Plains school district, so a lot of the area people would know Alice Clarke, my aunt. And the other one, the other siblings moved to Portchester and lived there, and that's where we were actually born.
I have this feeling that rural Dutchess County in Milan must have been very rural and very impoverished, and I think that their move to Westchester was like a move to vibrancy and career, and this road was dirt when we first came back here.
In the 60s.
Yeah, I don't think there was much going on here. Agriculture was dead, and I think that my father's family grew up very poor. This is terrible farmland, really. I often wonder who were these guys, these Palatine Germans that came here and were able to clear this land and make a go of this. At a time when agriculture was going out in this area anyway. I do remember my father talking about walking to that Academy Hill, the Academy on Academy Hill Road. Do I have that right? Yeah. The school. I think he said they walked barefoot and put their shoes on when they got there so as to not wear their shoes out. And he told, and Florence told, how they would walk across lots because it was very open then. I think Aunt Florence walked over to the schoolhouse on Round Lake Road up through Albright's. It was all open.
And Uncle George would have done that too.
To teach, though. She taught over there.
Oh, okay. Right, like for 1 year or something?
Yeah, well, I don't remember, but I never knew. But, yeah, how about that? The last of the one-room schoolhouse crowd. In later years, I know my father, and I'm sure his sisters, went to the Rhinebecks. Know how they got there. I think they went there by horse and wagon.
They must have. Yeah.
So, I don't know, I sort of interrupted. I wished I remembered more of what my father had said and done. I know they worked hard. I think the farming thing pretty much ended with my grandfather, my father's death. I think that what living they made from this farm was not enough to for them to maintain that.
What so many people did around here. They ran a boarding house, and
What year did he die? My father was in college.
I think 1928.
Yeah.
Our grandfather died in 1928, so we never met him, and my grandmother died in like 1940, so we never met her.
Yeah, right.
Elizabeth Cookingham Clarke.
Well, I would say that, so my Aunt Marian and her family moved into that house over there, and I don't know what arrangement they had with their siblings, but my aunt with her daughters, well, she was the only one that had children. Uncle George did, but she lived in what is now my house, and I don't know whether because she had children, she was there at the time, that she was the owner and user of that house, and we never really came up much, because
I think that the siblings owned it together for the most part.
Right.
But it wasn't that big of a house.
It was a family place that was pretty much dominated by Aunt Marian and her family, I think. And I think that was just by chance. That was what I thought.
Yeah.
And we didn't come up much because it was a full house. And but I remember coming up from Port Chester, and it was just a marvel to come up to this place. It was just great. It felt like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And my mom, when she moved up here, she thought she'd been cast into the wilderness.
Oh my goodness! And my poor mother had to come up here and make friends from start. I mean, she didn't know anyone.
She was a Greenwich gal. I mean, she moved up from that neck of the woods.
So she had to go into the Women's Health Club and the Women's Republican Club.
She did what Mrs. Landauer said she did. She became a joiner. So our youth here was spent working on these fields and picking rock and pulling weeds. I mean, there was no mercy from my father. I mean,
yeah, it was cutting brush and
reclaiming this place, and he said, "We got to get this place subjugated." That's the way he said it. So there's a lot of weed picking and stone picking, and
you'd say get into your play clothes, and that meant it was time for work.
Come home after school in the winter when there was only 40 minutes and a half or an hour of daylight, and we'd go out and cut brush and we'd sharpen our axes, and that's the way it was done in our world.
Yeah, that's because that's the way my father was raised. We came here in 1960. I was 5, and you were about 7 and a half.
Yes, so.
Billy was about 10. Yeah. And we remember it was a big deal when a car went by. There were just a few cars a day. Just like, look, it's a car! Who is it?
Well, that's Mrs. Julia Gassar.
Yeah, then it was a big deal when they did a lot of blasting along the road. The outcrops of rock to straighten the road out.
Then they paved about a year after.
We only had one usable vehicle too. I mean, my father would take that. The first year we lived up here, my father was still teaching down in Port Chester, and he would come up on the weekends. So my mother and we
She was carless, I think.
Yeah, because we used to have to walk down to Brooklyn Heights Road to catch a school bus. I think it was one year when there was an austerity budget, or was it all the time?
Yeah, it was an austerity budget, I think, that caused that. They shortened up all the bus routes.
And
so after my dad bought this place back, he had retired from the school teaching job, and he also owned a lot of properties in Port Chester that he had sold. So he came up here and had 20 years of bliss, sort of reclaiming these fields and removing stone wall and land clearing and planting hay fields and growing hay, and he had a nice time. My father was a boyhood friend of Lee Jacoby, because they went to that school out the Academy Hill School. Ben Collins, he lived down in Rock City and had that farm. If you go left on 308 toward Rhinebeck, immediately on the right, there's an old farm. There was a milk delivery thing that happened in later years too. George Lenhart was the milkman.
Our famous thing with him was that either the milkman or the mailman would always be stopping and knocking on our door to tell us our sheep were out.
Hey, so a cool thing that my father that I liked, he talked about these farms were all entities. They were family bases, and every place was the old Cookingham place, or the Jacoby place, or the Pink place. It was known from the family that had been there multi-generations. That is cool. The joke with me, I'm doing this stuff because my father would have wanted me to do it.
By the way, they used to raise chickens. They had up there. I guess it was when my grandfather was still alive. Yeah, 'cause he was talking to his daughter. They had 500 or 600 chickens, leghorns, and it was called the Mount Pleasant Poultry Farm.
Okay, so looking forward, I mean, this development that's happening here is heartbreaking and frightening, but except for this new wave of new farmers that are coming in, agriculture is in decline here, and I'm delighted that there are kids that want to farm, but this is becoming affluent suburbia, and I don't like it. However, if we're not moving ahead, then maybe we're going backwards. And I don't think my father was anti-development. I mean, I don't see us wanting to, develop any of this land here. However, with these people comes wealth and vibrancy and work and
culture.
New York culture and
good restaurants.
It's not a bad thing if you drive out by Fly Creek and Oneonta and not so much Cooperstown, because that's pretty affluent, but those little villages out there are dying, and there's beautiful Greek revival houses that are falling into ruin. I just saw them a month ago. Barns collapsing. I mean, the rich folk are not there to keep that stuff alive. So I don't want to say I welcome suburbia, but let's face it, it's nice to have some wealth coming into this area.